All right, so what we're going to do now, we're moving into the Too Long Didn't Watch content of the evening. I'll probably be here for another hour, maybe 90 minutes or so, where we will be watching and breaking down Rob and Destiny's arguments. I'm probably going to watch the first 30 minutes to an hour of Rob just to see what the introductory arguments are, and then I'm going to check out the last hour of the show. I can't promise that we're all going to get it done tonight, and if it is interesting, then I will come back and do more of it. But this is kind of like I don't want to say it's hot this week, but it is at least what's interesting to me this week. So let's check out Mr. Rob Knorr and Mr. Destiny debating January 6th, whether or not it was an insurrection, because I am told that there is some shenanigans with not Chat GPT, but Claude AI, and it's supposed to be semi-relevant to the debate. And
wait. The fear is that another civil war would happen, right?
If you want me to read exactly what Bode and Paulson said, and I know you've cited them previously.
Yes, and I read that entire paper, and I don't remember them saying that they worried about state elections.
I didn't read the whole paper. Being honest with you, I read someone's review of the paper, so it is possible that they're wrong.
Wait, are you reading from the paper now, or are you reading the review of the paper?
I'm reading review of the paper.
Whose paper you... Or wait, can you link me what you're reading right now?
Believe it or not, no. I can send you a screen cap. I just took a
Or
picture.
can you tell me who the author is, or tell me what this paper is? This isn't a Chat GPT summary, right, Rob?
No, it's not Chat GPT. I think it's Claude.
And for those of you who don't know, that's an AI. And sorry, somebody, I saw it in the chat. Aircraft Sparky says it isn't relevant. Destiny even agreed it was correct. I think there's one thing that's off, but bringing it up because I haven't showed myself a lot because the last one was just a conversation. Thank you to Grassroots Hegemon for giving us all our tasty donos. Thank you to Christian Valeris for giving us donos as well. Like the stream. It's free. It pops us up in the algorithm. More people can come in and have fun with us. If you are on Twitch, then go ahead and follow or become a subscriber. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. It's free, or become a member. Engage, have fun with chat. Let's continue.
All right. So, saw your debate with Andrew on January 6th. It kind of helped him with his introduction a little.
Nice.
I think that the problem was there were two different reasons for that debate. We could argue about whether or not following the prompt of the debate's important, blah, blah, blah. The reason that you want to talk about this debate is Democrats want to hyper-focus on January 6th so that they could have all their worst impulses to use lawfare and to dehumanize their opposition, which you did an incredible job of saying that anybody that goes to a Trump rally is f***ing around and finding out, even when an innocent firefighter gets killed, whatever. Andrew's point is, seeing as how you've in the past actually supported the...
So hold on. Rob's not starting with whether or not it's definitionally an insurrection. He's saying Rob is saying the left is hyper-fixated on January 6th to justify disgusting behavior now, which I kind of agree with. So I'm not saying like it's the strongest point or anything, but I do think that they use January 6th as a reason to say Trumples are not human beings. It's just true.
Rationale for insurrections as a politically useful tool. He's totally willing to accept your definition of the term insurrection if you concede that Democrats engage in it as well, because he's making a broader point that you're only interested in looking at this issue in a vacuum to demonize your opponents, but you actually don't really give a shit about insurrections at all, and you'll support them when they occur on your side. That's exactly what my feelings are on this, and the fact that
I like what Rob has presented so far. So hold on. Destiny will accept. Oh no, hold on. This was Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson will accept Destiny's definition if Destiny admits that he's selective with when he cares. Which is actually, again, I think that's an interesting point. So you could say that you can say that the BLM riots, some of them, not all of them, but particularly when they were attacking Capitol buildings or courthouses or police precincts, you could say that they were interrupting the normal function of the government. And on top of that, I don't know if they wanted to overthrow the government, but as a matter of fact, let's just look it up. Insurrection definition. A violent uprising against an authority or government. I just think that some of the BLM riots qualify. Just true. I mean, I'm happy to hear counter arguments from chat, but I think that's just true. Sorry, Grassroots Tegemon, your attempt to make me mortgage my 7th house has left me scarred and deformed. Then stop. I appreciate the donos, Grassroots Tegemon, but I hope you are an independently wealthy man who does not have better things to be spending your money on. It is appreciated, but you are like single-handedly funding the live streams right now. Jesus Christ. So, Christian Valeris, your donos are appreciated as well. Do not feel like you need to chase Grassroots Hegemon. He's clearly on a tear. But anybody else is welcome to donate. But Grassroots Hegemon, thank you kindly again for the donations. I hope you're an engineer or a lawyer or you have a trust fund or something like that, because you are being too generous tonight. Grassroots Hegemon says, I'm not rich or poor. I'm a very medium person, wouldn't spend what I didn't have. Okay, excellent. As long as you're not spending what you don't have. General Ballsack says, I like the turn at Counterfire. Thanks for rejoining the rational team. Well, General Ballsack, to be honest, if the Democrats, okay, let's say that Kamala Harris and Waltz never mention guns again. They just say, yeah, we think universal background checks are good and we want some, ERPOs or whatever. Thank you, Christian Valeris. Jesus Christ. We're having a bidding war for super chats between Christian Valeris and Grassroots Hegemon. Thank you, guys. Sincerely appreciated. But let's say, what the f*** are we talking about? Let's say that Tim Waltz and Kamala Harris dropped the gun thing, which is something that I'm very passionate about. The way that other people, let's say females or whatever, they're passionate about abortion is the way that I'm passionate about guns. I think that the balance of power within the United States of America and the balance of power between the civilians and the government is one of the things that makes this country unique and special and powerful and cool and worthy of defense. And so if you take that away, I'm not saying an assault weapons ban is the line for insurrection, because obviously we had one in 1994 and there was a grandfather clause and all that kind of crap, and they made it weak and dumb and it had a sunset, so we didn't need to do a civil war in 1994. But overall, it would be, to me, a sign of bad things to come. And I would work, if I helped facilitate that, I wouldn't be able to forgive myself. However, if they dropped it and it's a choice between Trump and Harris and Waltz, if you don't care about guns, it's obviously Harris all day. Harris and Waltz, they probably support the government as it presently exists. They're probably not going to try to usurp government authority. They're probably not going to lie about the elections, as far as I know. So yeah, like if you don't care about guns, then the obvious choice is Harris and Waltz. So just because it's not my choice doesn't mean that people who don't care about guns shouldn't make that choice. I know that was a rant, but my bad. My bad for ranting. Christian Blair says, too freaking late for $20. Thank you, guys. You are kings amongst men. I will make sure it goes to good ends. Anyways. Yeah, Possum Nation actually makes an excellent point in reference to the topic. Insurrection is fine and righteous, but it has to be because of a true usurpation of power, like what just happened in Venezuela's elections. 2020 was very probably not stolen. Lol. I agree with that. General Ballsack says, I have more trouble with the foreign policy at Counterfire. What's Kamala going to do when the CCP blockades Taiwan? Laugh and play brat music? Yeah, probably. But to be honest, hopefully we've domesticated microchip manufacturing by the time that they invade Taiwan. Also, I think Taiwan is taking their defense very seriously, so I think that they're going to be a tough pill for China to swallow. Christian Blair says, I mean, even if you care about guns, the Supreme Court ain't allowing an assault weapons ban. I agree with you, Christian Valeris, but what happens is we have at least 2 Supreme Court justices that are in their 60s or 70s, and they're both conservative. And I don't know about how you guys view life, and I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but I pretty much count anything after the age of 50 as extra. Like, I know that some people live to be 80 or 90. I know average life expectancy is 74. However, there's plenty of people who, after their 50s, you just get cancer or a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. And so I view that as a possibility where we could lose a couple of Supreme Court justices and it could totally throw the system in for a loop. Not to mention the fact that if they were listening to Pisco or pondering politics, then they would stack the court. Jimmy Bean says it's like 10 years to domesticate chips, isn't it? Yeah, but we started like 8 years ago. So we're probably getting close, I would think. I think within 5 years, we'll have very advanced microchips domesticated to the point that losing Taiwan will not be an existential blow. I keep using existential. It will not be a critical blow to the economy. And I'm sorry, I need to get into the content, but you guys are memeing in chat and I'm having fun. Baby Blasphemy says, hopefully the removal of the Chevron standard means that it will be harder for the ATF to restrict guns. I agree, but if Harris Waltz has a sympathetic Congress and then a mass shooting or terrorist attack happens, I very much doubt that an assault weapons ban would make it through Congress. I agree there wholeheartedly. I just don't think the appetite's there. I'm just saying that I can't live with myself in the snowball's chance in hell that it actually does happen. I couldn't do it. General Paul Sack says CCP doesn't have the sea lift to knock Taiwan, but they can mobilize and accept more casualties easier than we can. General Paul Sack, not only do I agree, but I think that they have been wargaming using civilian ships to just sea lift everyone using commercial vessels. So I don't even think they're developing like a Marine Corps style amphibious assault capacity. I think their game plan would be to paratroop assault a port and then use the port to just use commercial vessels to take the island through sheer force of numbers and then just daring the United States to do anything about it. But the truth is, like, I obviously want every political asylee from Hong Kong and Taiwan to come to the United States. But obviously the microchip manufacturing is a huge deal. Possum Nation says, yeah, I'm worried about Taiwan in terms of Ukraine. I don't know why the fudge we haven't sent all the old ass hundreds of Bradleys. I mean, we do, but we don't want Ukraine to win. We just want them to screw over Russia. Harmony Rose says, you're still live, smiley face. We indeed are. We'll be live for another hour at least. Jimmy Bean says, their war game from the last thing I read was speed, get force and numbers over before we can get enough across the Pacific. Jimmy Bean, precisely. But anyways, sorry, I'm distracting from the content. Let's go.
You use a definition of insurrection that I think is incredibly too broad, that would literally encompass thousands of examples in the past 100 years since the last time Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was used, shows sort of the gamesmanship of this. And I think that both you, legal scholars, prosecutors on the left and the Democratic Party don't give a shit about this at all, which is why they haven't tried to use Section 3 for over 100 years. They just see it as yet another attempt in their longstanding efforts to demonize Trump and his supporters and to go after him using lawfare, as they've been doing since 2016.
Ooh.
Okay, I feel like you kind of give away the whole game plan with it.
Give away the whole game plan. That's his opening argument. Overuse of definition would lead to a bunch of other civil unrest definitionally meeting the criteria of Section 3? And Democrats don't really care. I think Democrats really do care. So I think that's like a silly point. Don't tell your opponent what they do and don't care about. That feels disingenuous. However, I think it's an okay opening argument.
This model, but we can walk through this. Okay, so you say that Democrats want to focus on January 6th to use lawfare and dehumanize their opposition. That is a take. It could also be that people focus on January 6th because insurrections are extremely exceptional events and they are extremely exceptionally bad, especially when they are cheerled by a president. I think that if it is the case, you believe that January 6th was an insurrection, and if you believe that the president cheerled it or caused it, it would probably be a really good thing to focus on. I think that is completely and totally fair. For supported insurrections as a political tool, I mean, insurrections are political tools. You would support them, I guess, when you would agree with the insurrection, like in the case of 1776, when we rebelled against the British. You'd probably oppose them when you feel like the insurrection is done for bad reasons. I think that's totally fair. I don't think literally a single person on the planet would disagree with that. Obviously, it's not about whether or not you would support the concept of an insurrection or not. It's about whether or not you would support it in a particular circumstance. For January 6th, I wouldn't support it. When you would say that you could accept, or Andrew or you could accept my definition of insurrection, as long as I would declare BLM riots rights as insurrections. Again, I feel like that gives away your whole game. Why would it ever be contingent upon me declaring other things as insurrections? The answer should be, or your requirement should be, it's okay that I'll accept your definition of insurrection, but you have to apply it evenly, which is fair. Obviously, if I'm going to agree to a definition, I think I would definitely apply it evenly. However, I can already predict, and we can go down that road if you want. I can already predict how that entire conversation will go. You and Andrew both know this. There is no love lost between me and BLM. If we do this debate, and if you debate this at 20 million %, you make the best possible points. The only possible thing that you can do is just move me into believing more BLM riots were insurrections. So I don't know, but we can go down that road if you want. I'd be interested in exploring it. When you say that I use a definition of insurrection that's too broad, we can also talk about that. Again, the definition that I'm using is the one that is found historically, both in law and in writing and in Congress. And if you have a better one that is more historically and legislatively and legally supported, then we could talk about that. I've never heard one before offered by your side. And then when you say people haven't used Section 3 in over 100 years, it's also possible that after the Civil War, nobody tried to rebel against the government in over 100 years. Again, exceptional circumstances call for exceptional measures.
Okay, so how about
Ooh, dang it. This is why Destiny 100 years, because it hasn't happened in 100 years. Yo, that is a phenomenal rebuttal. So by the way, I'm going to cheerlead Rob a little bit. You know, Rob and I obviously disagree on a whole bunch of things, but I do think that he can research things, relatively speaking, and articulate intelligent arguments. And so I'm just going to repeat what he said. Democrats are hyperfixated on January 6th to justify their current disgusting behavior. Andrew Wilson will accept Destiny's definition, and Rob will as well. If Destiny admits that he's selective with the definition and that he doesn't care about it when it's used with BLM, that's like an appeal to hypocrisy, which doesn't really work, unfortunately, with Destiny's rebuttal. Overuse of definition would lead to a bunch of other civil unrest, definitionally meeting the criteria of Section 3 and the definition of insurrection. Democrats don't really care about it. They're just using it as a political cudgel. So here, I think those are strong statements that can be supported. But I think Destiny's rebuttal actually takes the wind out of them. So Destiny says that what separates BLM from January 6th is that the president of the United States is cheerleading them. Now, Rob potentially has a rebuttal where Democratic politicians were cheerleading BLM, and even some of them got a little hyperbolic with, rioting is the language of the unheard, which could be viewed as a tacit endorsement. So I think the president endorsing them is uniquely bad, but I do think that Rob at least has a counterpoint that could take the wind out of that argument. Destiny is not concerned with insurrection as a general tool. For instance, he believes Rob would agree that 1776, the Revolutionary War, was justified. It's not about the general rule, it's about the event. BLM could be insurrections, and Destiny is open to understanding that. He's happy to accept new definitions. And then maybe the reason why Section 3 hasn't been used in 100 years is because nobody's tried it in 100 years. That is not bad early counters. I am excited to see how this develops. I'm going to check in with chat before we get back into it. Sloth the Shovel says, stare. I don't know. I enjoyed it. Jimmy Bean says, I do want to go down that road. They destroyed my city with impunity. Or with immunity, but I'm going to use impunity. Free mandatory vacation for all adult aged men. The food is serviceable. What is that, military service? What are we talking about? Grassroots Checherbone says, Rob is not bad faith. Pissing your pants over not addressing 160 points is not how we address bad faith. Zero. Well, from Rob's POV, more BLM events qualifying would just prove the non-uniform enforcement. I agree there, Zero. I think that's a point that he can solidify. Just kidding says, Destiny didn't read the material and Rob demonstrated that multiple times in the debate. Interesting. I've heard the opposite. General Balsack says, what ticks me off more about Waltz is him denigrating units he served with and as a master sergeant during the Minneapolis riots. I mean, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I didn't see that. Feel free to DM me that on Twitter, General Balsack. All right. Let's continue.
This, in the interest of fairness, I am willing to try to, as best as possible, hyper-focus on the definition of insurrection without going to things like Black Lives Matter and things like that for the first half of this discussion, if you're willing to broaden it out for the second half of the discussion. Is that fair?
Broaden it out. Like broaden out what we're talking about?
So I'm saying that what you want to get out of this is to look at, was this an insurrection using the technical legal definition?
Yeah.
That's what you want to focus on. I'm willing to focus on that. However, I would like you to reciprocate to talk about what I'm interested in talking about, which is the fact that this is being selectively applied, and your definition would be so broad as to encompass thousands of examples of insurrections that you didn't give a shit about. And in fact, you've given the rationale for why you think insurrections could be good. So at best, it's a amoral term. It doesn't have goodness or badness attached to it. And I think you're selectively applying it. But I'm willing to
Okay, we can do this, but I feel
discussion.
I have no problem with that, but I feel like you're literally debating the worst person on the left to accuse of being too nice to BLM. But if you want to, yeah, we absolutely can. I have no problem with that. Sure thing.
That's fine. We could get to that specifically. So let's start on.
And emotionally, right? If some of you guys in the audience don't watch a lot of Destiny or aren't familiar with his lore or whatever, the reason why emotionally DGG is automatically going to side with Destiny in reference to this is because Destiny, I believe, I don't know if it was his Twitch ban, but he lost a substantive amount of revenue. And I think he got banned off of some social media. I don't remember if that was Twitch or if it was Twitter or whatever. But basically he said, the rioting needs to effing stop. If white dipshit militias run around in trucks mowing down protesters, then so be it. Something like that. So he tacitly endorsed Republicans engaging in vigilante violence to stop the BLM riots because he felt that like they were counterproductive. And he took a lot of flack for that from peers, social media, sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so all in all, like I understand like you guys can still think that Rob has a point that Destiny does simp for progressive causes, but that is the trump card that Destiny is laying down early on.
The definitions of insurrection, right? I think you tell me if you agree or disagree with this. There are multiple types of definitions for a word. So there are what we understand colloquially as sort of a society to understand what a definition of a term is. Oftentimes that could be different than what the actual legal definition of the term. So for example, something like burglary, the actual legal definition of the term burglary might be different than what the average person when they say burglary means. Would you agree with that?
Maybe. I'm going to make this a little bit more specific. We're going to be really precise here. Okay.
Okay.
I think we're going to agree. I'm just going to reframe some of what you say into a more formal sense. Okay.
And Grassroots Hegemon, I don't know if you're asking me. Not so heavy-handed with mass shooters, are you? I mean, no, I'm pretty heavy-handed with mass shooters. I don't know if you're talking about Destiny or somebody else or somebody in chat, but yeah, I think mass shooters and terrorists should have a near instantaneous death penalty. Like if they're not taken out in the field, then they should have a death penalty case. If they're proven beyond a reasonable doubt, like they have a confession or a videotape of them doing it or something like that, they can have one appeal to make sure that all the evidence is lined up and that they truly are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But if they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then they should pretty much be executed within a year or two of their offense.
When we define terms, there are words that we understand to mean certain things, but the way that we define a term or an event might be different than, say, all of the different elements of a particular crime that might share the same word, that might show up like in an indictment or in court. So, as you said, somebody might say that, wow, this guy, he broke into my house and he broke into my house and he beat the shit out of me or something, right? He broke into my house and he assaulted me. But maybe in court, maybe it didn't count as like breaking and entering. Maybe it only counted as trespassing because of maybe a technicality because the door.
This is okay because he was invited in. This actually does happen. He broke into my house and he beat the shit out of me. Well, what ends up happening is sometimes people who are on drugs or who like doing drugs and drinking alcohol, they will try to f over their friends as soon as they get pissed off. And so people will exaggerate what's happened. So that has happened where people who got into a fight inside a house, the victim wanted to prosecute for battery and burglary, but the truth is they invited them inside the house. So this example is not off color.
Always open or something. I think that'd still be right, but like something like that, right? So in this
Hello, Vigilante TV. Good evening.
this case, we've got a colloquial term. He broke into my house. And then we've got like the legally accepted definition or the legally accepted crime that shows up on an indictment that has elements that are necessary for that crime to be considered a crime. And that these can be different things, right? Do you understand? You're following me?
Yes, that's largely what I'm saying.
Okay,
That's basically what I'm saying.
Cool. Okay.
So I think that the reason that we're having this discussion around insurrection has to do with what would the legal ramifications be, which is why we would prefer a legal definition in that sense, but also what we should do politically, like who should we vote for? What does it mean to have engaged in an insurrection? I think that term's more important. So I'll give you what my definition of the term insurrection is, and then I'll allow you, I assume you're going to use the same definition you used with Andrew, but I'll give you a chance to reread it.
Sure.
I think there were 4 parts, but this is what I came up with and what I think. And this is just off the top of my head.
Biz D says, but they already have a death wish. That's a useless deterrent. I don't care. Kill them. You killed a few dozen people. We have to. So hold on. I'm actually going to articulate this because this does piss me off. Biz D, if a terrorist or a jihadist or a mass shooter kills a whole bunch of people, what he's saying is, I don't care about society. I don't care about community. And on top of that, I'm going to end a bunch of people's lives prematurely in order to either make an ideological point or just for nihilist existential reasons, right? And so let's say they get killed on scene. Okay, great. They're dead. Problem solved. That person no longer exists. And on top of that, people who might be considering their action know the end result of that path. Then when it comes to actual capital punishment, in order to keep somebody alive in jail or prison, you have to feed them. You have to clothe them. You have to give them electricity, water, food, et cetera, et cetera. And when it comes to food, this isn't morally arbitrary. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. I drop down the amount of meat that I eat for health reasons, but I still consume meat. And the truth is that cows have never done me wrong. Chickens have never done me wrong. And yet I'm willing to slaughter dozens of them per year in order to perpetuate my existence or have people slaughter them on my behalf every single year. I think that if you murder without just cause dozens of your peers, then you are not worth the energy in order to slaughter other animals for your continued existence. So just as a matter of practicality, we will not kill chickens, fish, and cows for a human being who does not deserve life. Therefore, if you're a terrorist, jihadist, you're a mass shooter, whatever, and it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, we have a confession, we have videotapes of you doing it, we have DNA evidence, we have your manifesto, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to kill the chickens and cows and plants and water and electricity. We're not going to use all of that to keep you alive. We're going to punch you out of this existence, and we're going to pray that there is a God who is going to judge you for your actions. That's my perspective.
I said an insurrection is a group of people planning a serious attempt to overthrow the government using violence. When people hear the term insurrection, I feel that that's the generally accepted in the ballpark of what people are talking about. Has to be a group of people. They have to be using violence for an attempt, a serious attempt to overthrow the government. That's what I think people mean by insurrection. I don't think they mean protesting one law. That if you're upset with, say, mail carrying laws.
Grassroots Touchabomb for $10 says, if DGG had the diligence he keeps January 6th with a public mass shooting and an attempt to anti-life the former president, I give him more credit. His response discredited him morally for me. If you're talking about Destiny, I do not, I think Destiny is an intelligent, charismatic, intelligent fella who's good at debating. I would never go to him for moral advice, like the analysis of good and bad. I think that our fundamental systems are different. I think that he is a nihilist in a certain way, or at least he acts like a nihilist, which means that he doesn't believe that there's a higher power than his intellect. I don't think he believes in a sentient God, so to speak. And I think he's a hedonist, which means that he likes to engage in pleasure and avoid pain. I think I don't like either one of those philosophies. I was raised significantly different. I was raised in the Christian tradition. I am mildly attracted to some levels of stoicism. And basically, I just don't think that those are good ways to live. So, yeah. So I would go to Destiny for political analysis and good, fiery, spicy debates. I would not go to him for moral guidance on how to live your life. And
that you use violence to stop a mail carrier that you've engaged in an insurrection. So that's why I prefer the colloquial term. I'm willing to listen to what your legal definition is. I think that your legal definition, I'm going to have problems with it, which I could illustrate. And I also question whether or not January 6th meets the definition of insurrection under the definition that you'll give.
Sure.
But that's
okay. I might try to live in both worlds here, just 'cause I'm curious, but we'll see. Okay. I'm going to ask. I'm going to torture your definition a little bit. Okay. So you said a group of people planning a serious attempt to overthrow the government using violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My first question is going to be, okay, I'm about to go full Jordan Peterson on you. When you say group, does it just mean 2 or more people?
I would say, yeah. I would say that would probably fall within that definition of it, 2 or more people. I think that I'll just sort of maybe envision where you're going to go with some of this.
No, wait. Hold on real quick. Okay. Don't envision where I'm going. I'm not trying to trap you on anything. I'm just ironing out.
No, I'm just going to say it is a threshold argument.
Sure. Right? Yeah, I understand. I understand this. And also,
wait, old school. Weren't you yet? You need to tell me. So old school. This is you're gonna have to forgive me. There's some people that I recognize in chat for being consistent. So Christian Valeris, Jonah Boy, Grassroots Hegemon. I think that, a narco something I've seen a while. Aircraft Sparky I've seen a lot. Zero Fucks I've seen. There's people that I recognize all the time. And old school, like you're just gonna have to remind me. I wouldn't be surprised if we even had a conversation on Discord VC or even did a debate in the past. Can you remind me of what your politics are? Because I saw a critical comment on one video that made me think that you were conservative, but now this one is kind of in the middle. At Counterpoints, hot take: giving the state the power of life or death over its citizens is not a conservative value, despite many conservatives advocating for it. It's totalitarian. So breaking down this comment, conservative, right? So Edmund Burke and everyone in his era was a monarchist, and those governments absolutely had the power of life and death. As a matter of fact, you could say that the reason why the state first came into existence was for security, which is largely an idea about physical security, life and death, whether or not you can kill people. So kill people or exile people. So I think that 100%, like the ability of the state to have life or death within its hands is probably one of the oldest governmental ideas ever. Now, if you want to say it's not libertarian or it's not in line with the liberal libertarian values of the United States of America, because we're talking about the rights of individuals, then I could see your argument. But as far as like conservatism as an idea, I don't agree with those words being used in that phrase. General Balsack says, I'm moderate conservative, but a war hawk. This is the only disconnect I have with MAGA folks, that and the subtle racism. Well, we like to be subtly racist around here, so, that's not untrue. I'm a Boggle Hobbs enjoyer. Those two don't need to be separate. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
So if by the time we reach the end of this, if you're like, this doesn't work, okay, I'm not trying to Andrew Wilson you. You can go back and amend anything if you want to. So, okay, I don't care. Okay. I'm not trying to. Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. So when you say group, we mean 2 or more people. Okay. When you say people, I'm going to assume that you mean like U.S. citizens / residents, right? Like Russians coming here and trying to do something. You wouldn't consider an insurrection, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I would say they also have to be non-state actors. Though I don't, well, let me be careful here. I have to think about this for a second, because I believe in 1954, the last time that U.S. Code 2383 with the rebellion and insurrection was applied, I believe those were Puerto Rican nationals that fired weapons inside the Capitol. I think that was 1954. That was considered an insurrection. I think that probably, as long as you're a non-state actor. So I guess the difference here would be
real quick, when you're saying non-state actor, is the state you're referring to the federal government, individual state governments, or just anybody who's part of the government, period, from top to bottom?
I think it would have to be anyone that's part of the government from top to bottom in our country or a different country. So, for example, if the people affiliated with the government of Russia attacked, I don't think that's an insurrection. However, if people that happen to be Russian attacked and they're not affiliated with the state of Russia, that could be deemed an insurrection. Similarly, if a bunch of people, like let's say a general decides that he's going to try to overthrow the government. That's more of a coup, I think, than an insurrection, because those are state actors. So I think when I say group of people, I'm not thinking through it too specifically. We could get into why this would matter differently, but I think that it would have to be, for it to be an insurrection, non-state actors like civilians.
Okay. And citizens that are civilians, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be citizens, but yes. Like, for example, you could be an immigrant that's not a citizen, and still
I have citizen/residents.
Okay,
but like I'm guessing, like, if a ton of, like, let's say a ton of DACA recipients were to try to like attack and overthrow the government, would you consider that like an insurrection? Or
yeah, I think that would if they meet the rest of the threshold, I think that would be an insurrection. That group would qualify.
Okay. I don't think this will even come up or matter, but I'm just saying. Okay. A group of people. Fair, yeah. Okay. You said planning. What does planning mean to you?
I think that the planning has to be something that they pre-planned, and there has to be violence included in the plan that is for the purpose of the overthrow of the government. So, for example, it's not enough to say, we don't like this tax law. Right. For example, if we take the Whiskey Rebellion example, we don't like that they're taxing. We don't think the federal government should have that. They have to then go the step further and plan to use violence as part of their initiative to overthrow the government. So it's not enough to just say, we don't like what the government's doing here, and we're going to show up, and if we're attacked, we'll fight back. It has to be, we are going to use violence to change this government, to overthrow this government. That has to be part of the planning process.
Okay. They pre-plan a violent thing to overthrow the government. Okay, you have wait, real quick. When you say violent and you say planning to use violence, does intimidation count or no? So like,
no.
So if 100 people show up and they're like, we're not going to use them, but let's all like bring guns and show up in force just so that they know we mean business, that wouldn't count. If let's say every other element was met, they want to overthrow the government, they're all going to show up with rifles and stuff, but they're like, we're probably not going to use them, but just like bring them just so that they know we're like serious. That wouldn't count?
I don't think so. I don't think that's what people today understand when they're saying the term insurrection would apply that with. For example, it's very legal in most states to open carry. I don't think exercising your right to open carry at a protest, let's say you were against the overturning of Roe v. Wade and Dobbs, right? If a bunch of pro-choicers exercise their Second Amendment rights to open carry and showed up and protest, you might be intimidated by that if you disagreed, but I don't think that qualifies as an insurrection because there wasn't planning to use violence to overthrow the government.
Speaking then to intent here, just curious, how would you ever discern in a group whether they plan to use violence or not? If, let's say, when they when they show up to do the insurrection, the other side like gives up immediately because they see all the people.
Well, it would be difficult, just like there's always difficult in providing intent. If you had
wait. I'm sorry, real quick, because this gets brought up so much. It's not difficult to do intent. I don't know where the solution came from, or if it only comes up in this. That's not true. All criminal prosecutions in the United States rely on proving intent. You have to have a mens rea element to commit a crime if it's not like a strict liability or whatever offense. So you can prove it.
Ooh, Destiny's getting dangerous. He's reading more law. I think the reason why, argumentatively, sorry if I'm not doing a whole lot of commentary right now, but basically, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So far, they're just defining the terms, and while it's not the most exciting of content, I think it's necessary in order to understand when they're arguing later. I think that the problem with using the lay definition, that group of people trying to overthrow the government using violence, overthrow is going to be debatable, and then using violence is going to be debatable as well. And then the reason why they're tamping down on whether or not they had intent to use violence is because there is an argument amongst MAGA that most people who showed up to January 6th, and this is true, by the way, showed up to protest. They didn't plan on fighting cops or killing cops. They didn't plan on killing Pence or whatever. 95% or 99% of people were showing up to protest what they viewed as a fraudulent election, as they knew Trump had described it to them. However, the problem is that Trump was either completely incompetent or was intentionally lying about whether or not there was outcome determinative voter fraud that affected the election. And then there was a small but real portion of people who were prepared for violence. People who did bring firearms, did bring pipe bombs, did bring zip ties, did plan on killing Pence, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where, that there was people like texting each other and emailing each other where the tunnel system under the Capitol was, so hopefully they could catch some Congress people who were trying to escape. I would view that level of coordination as obvious attempts to use violence. So yeah, so I think even with Rob's lay definition, you can argue that an insurrection has been met. But I'm kind of wondering where they're going to go.
Intent. It's not that difficult. We do it all the time at criminal court. So just
Bud123 says, do we know who the pipe bomber is? I'm going to take this question out on you. And it's not anything personal. I'm getting tired, so it's probably not even going to sound that pissed off. When you have, I used to work in law enforcement. It was local law enforcement, but I used to work in law enforcement, okay? And oftentimes, we would use CCTV as a way to get people, like, look for stuff, right? We would look for license plates, or we would look for people, or we would look for descriptions or shoplifting or whatever, right? And here's the truth, is that a shitload of CCT systems suck, okay? So for instance, in Walmart, the CCTV systems by the entrance and exit are good because you can see people's faces and you can see their size and shape and clothing and all that kind of stuff. So if you were looking for one person, you relatively speaking knew who they were, or if they came in regularly, you could find that person using the camera that is at the entrance and exit to Walmart, as an example. But the cameras outside of Walmart are dog shit. The parking lot cameras. The only thing that we've ever been able to use, this is just talking for me, the only thing we were ever able to use the exterior cameras for was like determining fault in an accident. As far as getting a license plate, you could be 20 or 30 feet away from a Walmart camera and we cannot read your license plate. It is blurry as hell because the camera quality is such dog shit. They're there for deterrence, not for actual camera quality. I'm trying to think of other examples, but the point is that shitloads of CCTV are dog shit. Now, it's the Capitol, so shouldn't they have good CCTVs? Sure. But is that like a huge priority? Is the exterior CCTV cameras on the outside of a random municipal building in DC? Like, and even if it was, like January 4th, 5th, 6th, all leading up to it with tens of thousands of protesters, are you going to be able to see? And there were people absolutely wearing masks, wearing sunglasses, wearing hats, wearing jackets, wearing all that kind of shit. Are you going to be able to see somebody throw a piece of trash into a bush and you're going to be able to identify that person? Absolutely fucking not. And not only that, but that person, if they knew they were doing something like throwing a pipe bomb into a bush, they probably obscured it in a backpack or something like that. That way people wouldn't freak out when they threw the bag. And then not only that, but I might have already mentioned this because I am getting tired, but they probably obscured their face. They probably wore a baseball hat. They probably wore a hoodie. They probably wore sunglasses. And when you're talking about tens of thousands of people without witnesses, you're not going to be able to identify who that is. So the fact that, people ask me that question, they're like, how come they didn't figure it out? They're able to figure out everybody else. I'll tell you this, the Tsarnaev brothers, people, the FBI and civilians were poring over the Boston Marathon bombing footage for days. And I think they misidentified who the bomber was 2 or 3 times. So yeah, so like I don't take this like the NSA is omniscient, right? I don't accept that. I think it's a silly point. And Bud123, I'm not saying that you were saying that, but other people were saying that. Aircraft Sparky says the pipe bomber was FBI planting it. See, Aircraft Sparky is the guy I should be yelling at, right? General Ballsack says at Counterfire, yep, I was in private security for a time at a welfare office and later manager of a nationwide grocery store, not Walmart. This is true. Yeah. Camera quality varies. Christian Blair says at Counterfire, there's already video footage of the person who planted the pipe bomb. They couldn't determine if the person was a man or a woman. See, that's what I'm saying. If they're wearing jackets and stuff that's obscuring their face, then whatever. Bud123 says it was the night before the criminal was masked, so yeah, I can't identify them. Okay, yeah, that's kind of my point. All right, sorry for ranting at you, sorry for getting fussy, but it was a pet peeve of mine. Somebody said it on Twitter. It made me upset. I'm sorry for taking it out on you.
To return, so because I'm asking, like, it seems like you could very easily, like, I could foresee almost any insurrection being planned and be able to say, like, make sure you show up, bring guns, we might have to fight, whatever. But if you show up and nobody resists,
yes,
then it feels like, well, they didn't use violence. They just
General Ballsack. My wife
it's easy to prove the
General Ballsack. My wife says that she loves your name. I hope that makes you feel slightly happier with your life and your choices.
intent. You would show the intent by proving that their planning included using violence to overthrow the government, as opposed to just saying we're going to arm ourselves to protect ourselves if violence is enacted against us. You'd be able to prove that easily, as you said.
What if you show up with well, here's a question, okay? You live in a house or an apartment, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say that I go and I'm going to occupy your living room, okay? Because I don't want to live in Florida anymore. DeSantis makes me too mad. I'm going to go live in Rob's living room. I don't care if you want me there or not. I am going to bring a gun to protect myself, though. Do you think that if I show up like that, would you say that I'm intending to use that gun or no? My rationale would be, because my rationale would be, I'm showing up. I know I'm going to be trespassing on your property, maybe even breaking and entering. And if I bring a gun, I know you're going to want me to leave. It's probably not likely that you're going to demand or that you're going to be happy that I live there, right? So at some point, I feel like if I bring a gun, I feel like we're kind of like, I'm basically planning to use it, right? I'm kind of bringing it like, yeah, go ahead.
The analogy doesn't work very well because you're allowed to show up to protest.
Wait, real quick. Hold on. This is the only question I'm going to make of you, okay? And I'm begging you, okay? Because I love you. I appreciate you. You have a good brain, okay? That's why I'm talking about this. I like you more than Andrew, okay? Please stop trying to head off my arguments, okay? I'm not, if you say something and later on I bring up a point and you're like, oh, this doesn't work, we can go back and we can amend any definition you give me. I'm not trying to trap you or crucify you on something you said. So if you want to change something later, that's fine. But don't try to give me something now trying to head off every single potential argument. You're absolutely correct for a variety of reasons. Me trespassing on private property doesn't mean the same thing as me going to a public protest with a firearm. I agree with you 100%. But I'm not necessarily going there. I'm just trying to figure out like how we would prove the intent of this particular thing. Like, did he plan to use a gun if I break into your house and I've got a gun on me and I know you're gonna fight back? That's just my question. Yeah.
No, I would say
Can I say so far, Destiny's being pretty fucking chill. So I'm sorry for dropping the random F-bomb, but I'm getting tired, so I'm getting sloppy. But Destiny's being pretty chill. And on top of that, opening this argument with like, I love you, Rob, I respect you, I think you got a good brain, I think you make good arguments, et cetera, et cetera. He's trying to set a different tone from his normal fiery debate. So I actually, I'm sure this heats up later on, but so far it seems like it's good faith. I'm not trying to be, totally dick righty, but I think he's doing good. Grassroots Hegemon for $5 says, I'm a serial speed demon and I want you to count my super chats towards my inevitable bail. Okay, sounds good. I'll put these in the Grassroots Hegemon slush fund. General Ballsack says, Counterfire, thanks, Connor. I have a girlfriend, though. I'll support you again after the election. I'm super poor right now. No problems, buddy. I appreciate you. Do not. Grassroots Hegemon is now my JMac, and Christian Valeris has been helping out, pitching in. So don't you worry about it. Although, shill time. If you are on Twitch, follow. Become a sub if you want to. If you're on YouTube, like the stream so other people know that we're live. We're going to be live probably for, I don't know, another 45 minutes or so. Then, like the stream, comment in the chat for engagement. If you have money, give a super chat. Christian Valeris, you've already done enough. Grassroots Hegemon, you've already done enough. But if anybody else has money burning a hole in your pocket, it is appreciated. Not required, but always appreciated. Thank you kindly.
Still think that it's relevant to say that the analogy is far off base. I'm not trying to hedge off arguments. I'm saying that it changes the way that we analyze things, right? But let's try to not do that for the sake of this argument and say this. Okay, no, that doesn't prove that his intent was to use that gun. His intent was to commit a crime, and he had a firearm on him, but that is still not in proof that he intended to use that firearm in order to commit his crime. No.
Okay, just curious. So I disagree with your assessment here, but I'm going to sidestep for a quick second and ask, are you aware, my understanding is that in criminal law, courts would disagree with you. So something that I'm pretty sure is true is if you were to break into somebody's, now I'm sorry, I'm speaking as a police officer, not break in. Let's say you do no-knock warrant, you get into somebody's house. If you find drugs in an area and you find a firearm right next to them, I'm pretty sure it's impossible in court that firearm can be charged like as an accessory to having like using it to defend basically drugs or whatever. That's a charge that can get added on just because of the proximity to the gun and the drugs, that a court could assume reasonably that you plan to use one to defend the other and that you can be convicted in front of a jury as a crime for this. Are you aware of this, or do you want me to, we can look up particulars on this?
I believe that. I'll take your word for it. I think that sounds reasonable. It sounds like something I've heard.
Okay.
The problem I have with that is that doesn't prove that the intent was to use that gun for a specific action to commit violence. It could show that the way that those laws are written are specifically that intimidation is a factor that could be included, that would be enough to make that charge. When I'm saying that intimidation doesn't mean what I think is the...
We're still waiting for them to warm up. So General Ballsack says that Counterfire Kamala really should have picked Kelly or Ben Shapiro. Waltz was the worst choice she could have made. I kind of agree, just because I think that Kelly would have got more white males. He's a formal naval aviator. He's a astronaut. There's a cool factor there. I think he talks coherently and intelligently. I think they're just counting on Waltz to be charismatic enough that people will look past his policies. And honestly, General Paulzak, my vibe is that the Democrats are feeling pretty confident about the election. Now, we could all eat crow on that. We could all eat crow on that in a few months. Maybe Trump actually does have a lot of, I don't want to say silent support because the supporters are quite vocal, but maybe more moderates are breaking for Trump because Kamala and Waltz are too progressive, all that kind of stuff. But I think that the Democrats are pretty confident that they can win. Really, if Kamala does well in the debates, if she's doing debate prep left, right, and center, if she has a few good press conferences, if she answers some good questions, et cetera, I think it's a strong chance for a Kamala win. And I'm not saying that just to cope. I'm saying that because I think I feel it in the air. So General Ballsack says, I'm in Arizona. I would have been okay with it, even if his 2A policy is confusing. Yeah, I mean, same. I don't expect him to be Giffords. I expect him to hopefully have a more centristy policy on it than his wife, who was shot. So I understand why she's really anti-gun. Nedak says, as an Arizonan, I was really wanting Kelly. Yeah, seems like a good dude.
Colloquial definition, then no, you would need to provide that there was some planning that planned to use violence in a serious attempt to overthrow the government.
Okay, then let's say that if I go back to the house example, so I break into your house and I say, I want to be in Rob's apartment or house.
Hey guys, I'm going to fast forward just because I'm dragging a little bit. So I'm going to fast forward like 10 minutes just to see if they get a little bit more spicy, because it does feel like they're still trying to work out the argument. And I feel like they'll be repeating themselves.
I want to steal this from someone's desk. I'm hoping they're not around. But if they are around and they start enacting violence on me, I'll be prepared to defend myself against that violence. No, I think that is different than saying I'm going to take a weapon, or I'm going, even without a weapon, I'm going to punch this person or physically assault them in an attempt to steal what I want from them. That is clearly a planning, using violence as part of that plan. I think those are two different things.
Can you defend yourself while committing a crime?
No.
If the other person is expected to defend themselves? So, like, for instance, if I break into somebody's house with a gun...
You can absolutely defend yourself while committing a crime, but you will suffer legal consequences as a result of it. Zero Fuck says, no spoilers, but the first 3 quarters is them working things out. That's the majority of the debate. I'm gonna let this line of inquiry cook for another minute, but honestly, we might jump to the end to see if it gets hotter, just because they're highlighting the definition. But my problem so far is that Rob is using a lay definition in order to try to, I would say, excuse January 6th. But then it's a lay definition, and Destiny is he's analyzing it for each individual variable. And then it feels like Rob is just like, well, yeah, but that's my variable. So it doesn't feel like it's necessarily backed by the law. This just feels like vibes.
To defend myself while I'm robbing them. Can I defend myself if they try to kill me while I'm stealing from them?
It's legally, I'm not sure exactly. This sort of gets back to what you said earlier. I'm sure that there's probably.
I'm just asking, like, in your mind, like, does that count as self-defense? Like, I break into somebody's house because I want to steal some shit, but I bring a gun with me in case the owner's there. Owner comes downstairs, finds me, and he tries to kill me as I'm stealing his shit, and I shoot and kill him. Would you say, yeah, I mean, it was self-defense. It was legal.
Yeah, that's murder. You know, that might not, you might be able to argue a lower level, but that's felony murder. So there is, we were actually talking about this with the lawyer earlier. So if you're a getaway driver and even one of your co-conspirators gets killed in the attempt, let's say you go rob a gas station, you're the getaway driver. The two guys enter the gas station, the owner has a gun, kills one of your friends. You can be charged with felony murder and catch serious time. Let alone, God forbid, the citizen, the civilian, the victim of your crime gets hurt or killed, you are liable for that 100%. We can talk about moral versus criminal, but criminally, you're on the hook.
Legitimate.
I would say that probably is an act of self-defense that wouldn't held up legally. But
would you personally, would you consider it like morally? You'd say like, oh, self-defense. I think morally he's in the right there. Let's say outside of
no, I would not think he's morally in the right.
Okay, why not?
Because I think that the act of being the first person to engage in the crime means the other person has the right to defend themselves and their property. Therefore, you're already acting immorally when they have the moral righteousness to defend their property, including using acts of violence. That itself is an extension of self-defense. And so you can't claim self-defense as a moral backing to go against someone else's claim of self-defense.
Okay, how can you? Because I would transfer that entirely to what I'm saying about the if you show up with knives to take somebody's lunch money and then you go to take it from their desk and then that person catches you and then they try to defend you, you know, they want to protect their lunch money and then you end up stabbing them and killing them. Why wouldn't that transfer over in the same way? Like how is that different?
I'm sorry, I cut out a little on me.
If you were to show up to somebody's desk to take their lunch money with knives and the other person caught you trying to take their lunch money and then they defended it and then you ended up stabbing them while they were trying to, you know, kill you or defend taking the lunch money, why doesn't it transfer over 100% there?
Well, it's not that it doesn't transfer over. I would still feel the same way morally. That's a different question of, did the planning of this include using violence in order to commit this act of this crime? I'd still say no.
If I break into somebody's let's say I break into somebody's house, let's say that I know they're there. I break into somebody's house and I have a gun with me. You wouldn't say that I'm planning on using that gun as part of my.
Let's move the analogy a little. Let's say it's a pocket knife. If you break into someone's house and you have a pocket knife on you, were you planning on using that pocket knife?
Yeah, I think it's part of my plan. Yeah, it's to defend myself if I get caught doing the crime. Otherwise, why?
Red Sparrow says, Pisco does come out against part of Destiny's argumentation surrounding possession of a weapon while committing a crime, if you care, the specific part, actually. If you want to articulate it, Red Sparrow, I'd be interested to hear the difference. The difference that I'm hearing so far, and again, I'm not trying to be too lackadaisical about this. I understand you guys are watching for entertainment, and so far it's been relatively dry. However, what's going on here, the nuance, is that if I break into somebody's house with a firearm, this is obviously like a preemptive escalation. I know that there's the potential for another person or myself to lose their lives as a result of our interaction. That's technically true for every burglary and theft, but there's a reason why the classification is different. Because if somebody is breaking into your house and they steal a loaf of bread and then they run out the house before you come back, you obviously don't want to punish that the same way that you would as somebody breaking into your house with a gun or a knife and they're stealing all your valuables, right? And because what they're saying is, I know that I'm at risk for a confrontation, and if that confrontation occurs, I am willing to take another person's life either by severely injuring them or killing them. So that, to me, that inference makes sense. What I think Rob is articulating, which I don't agree with him on, is that because we're all talking about this in reference to the riot at the Capitol, right? What he's saying is that people could reasonably bring ballistic vests to the Capitol because it was a controversial election. There's law enforcement and there's potential rioters there. There's the potential for a gunfire exchange or a ballistic exchange. And even if you don't have any weapons, having a ballistic vest there to make sure that a stray bullet doesn't kill you is a reasonable precaution to take. That doesn't mean that you planned on using the ballistic vest in order to overthrow the government. It was a reasonable protection. Also, because conservatives do favor guns and knives and pepper spray and all that kind of stuff more than liberals and progressives, it's also reasonable to bring a concealed pistol to this event, because you can reasonably believe that there could be some leftists, some Antifa, some, counter protesters, whatever, who might get into a fight with you. And then as a result, you might have to defend yourself, right? That is also a reasonable thing to consider, particularly, I think, in the right-wing spheres where you probably have that Antifa murder. I forget if it was up in Seattle. I think it was in Seattle. There was a member of Antifa who snuck up behind a member of Patriot Prayer and shot them in the back of the head while they were entering a parking garage. And that person was later killed by the U.S. Marshals, if you want to look up the story. It's reasonable to believe that that is a possibility. So bringing a concealed firearm and a ballistic vest is not necessarily indicative of intention to overthrow the government. Okay? So I think that's what Rob is poking at. But I think what Destiny's counter is that you are going there to change the results of the election isn't having a ballistic vest and concealed weapons and other things that might intimidate people reasonably interpreted as something that you might use. And I think the answer is just fundamentally yes. So what's the takeaway? Says Connor, what do you think of the Breonna Taylor thing where her boyfriend shot a cop and she dies in the return fire, but the boyfriend got off? I think that's fine. I think it's fine. The boyfriend wasn't involved in the drug ring. The boyfriend was just dating her. They thought it was burglars. The cops allegedly announced themselves, but the bedroom was far enough away from the entrance that they could reasonably think that it was burglars. As soon as the cops were identified, he stopped firing, all that kind of stuff. I'm perfectly fine with it. If anything, I think it's justified that he did get off. I want law enforcement to be able to do their jobs without getting killed, but the truth is, when you're doing no-knock raids on a house, the chances of being mistaken for a burglar are super high. Grassroots Tetramon says, having a weapon while committing a crime does not legally force an escalation of a charge. It doesn't force it. I agree with that. Obviously, it's going to be heavily context dependent. Christian Blair says, I heavily disagree with Rob, but I have a newfound respect for Pisco in his willingness to defend Rob. Yeah, of course. Pisco and Rob are peanut butter and jelly. You know, they go together. They can autistically argue with each other for hours and hours and hours. They are fantastic together. You can't have one without the other. What's takeaway says, I wish I could carry a sword and wear chainmail. Well, I mean, what's stopping you? Just go to a cosplay event. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I am sorry for yawning in your ear, but it is getting late. Oh, did people on January 6th have firearms? I think they did, but I think they were like concealed pistols. Jimmy Bean says, damn, and no one used said firearms. Crazy. Yeah, they just hit cops in the head with poles and sprayed them with, fire extinguishers and closed doors on them and punched them in the face and kicked them in the dick and went into secured areas of the Capitol. No big deal. At least nobody got shot, right? Except for Ashley Babbitt, who, by the way, I know you're probably not going to like this, but Ashley Babbitt, I have no problems with that shooting either. I think it was perfectly justified. I think that you can articulate imminent threat of death or great bodily harm in a reasonable manner all day, every day. Bud 123 says 1-6 is not sedition or insurrection like Shays Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion, or the Civil War, which involved actual military conflict warfare. Bud 123, insurrection doesn't involve definitionally armed combatants. Insurrection is defined as a violent uprising against an authority or government. I can look at, you guys want to do section 3? Google.com, section 3, insurrection. 14th Amendment, section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemy thereof. But Congress may vote of 2/3 of House to remove such a disability. So let's look up insurrection statute. I don't even know if there is a federal statute. Federal statute, insurrection. The prohibition on rebellion and insurrection arises in federal law 18 U.S.C. 2383. So let's go ahead and Google that. Sorry, let me copy. Why don't you let me copy? I'm going to read this section. Rebellion and insurrection, sedition, and treason. The prohibition on rebellion and insurrection arises in federal law 18 U.S.C. section 2383, which I will click in a minute. The law prohibits incitement, which is important, assistance, and participation in a rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States and its laws. Let's click on the actual statute. Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office. Do they not have the definition? Federal definition. U.S. federal definition of insurrection. I'm sure Destiny has it, but I don't want to scrub. According to 18 U.S.C. 2383, insurrection is a violent uprising against the authority of the state or its laws. I mean, yeah. It can also include organized resistance against the government or its regulations, or act as intended to challenge, disrupt, or overthrow the authority of the United States. Okay? I mean, that seems pretty broad. I understand why people would be arguing that it's too broad. Let's do rebellion real quick. Federal definition for rebellion. Still, in legal context, rebellion is generally understood an organized, armed, and often violent resistance or opposition to established government authority or its laws. So, who was I commenting on? Was it Bud123? Was it Zero Fucks? Who was it? I forget who it was. It might have been Jimmy Bean or something. No, hold on, I'll find it. Bud123. It's not sedition or an insurrection like Shay's rebellion, blah, 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 blah. You would be correct with rebellion. I don't think you're correct with insurrection. And as a matter of fact, wasn't there another one? Sedition. Let's look up sedition. Sedition definition. Sorry, this is more exciting and engaging than just listening to them figure out definitions. Conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. All right, let's do federal sedition. Definition. Sedition is a serious felony punishable by fines and prison time. Sedition is inciting revolt or violence against lawful authority to destroy or overthrow it. I will agree that Trump kind of covered his ass with the peacefully and patriotically. He probably saved his ass from sedition, because if you removed peacefully and patriotically from that speech, I think he would have been fucked. But I get the point. It's a decent point. I think insurrection, though, might be overly broad, but I still think the definition has been met. Proud Boys had access of pistols, and many of them had QRFs with assault rifles. Yeah, exactly. Now, QRFs with assault rifles, I don't even think DC is an open carry thing. So what were they QRF for? That would be interesting. If I could see the email communications or the Telegram communications or the secured communications of the Proud Boys and the QRFs, that would be interesting. What's the takeaway? It says 3 feet of sharp steel is a terror weapon. Even knives can cause flight paralysis. I mean, I agree there. Professor Sechaman says, like an idiot in a Rube peanut butter and jelly. Rude. So rude. Possum Nation says, apparently there were many with weapons that were not let in because they wouldn't go through the mags. Trump was upset that they weren't let in. Don't know if any of them made their way to the Capitol. Yeah. Grassroots Checherbon says, sedition is absolutely in the boundaries for January 6th. I mean, you can say it. I just think that he has a defense. General Ballsack says, you getting tired, my buddy? Media has scrubbed the waltz. I'll try to pull it tomorrow regarding the National Guard are a bunch of kooks. I mean, listen, General Ballsack, the National Guard is a bunch of kooks. Filled with kooks. Is it a crime to speak truth? General Ballsack says, why are we still at like 4 likes? Like, damn, stream, even if you're just waiting for Counterfire to enjoy blue crayons. Sometimes you have to like reset the stream in order to see what the likes are. If we are on sometimes 4 likes though, I'll freak out. No, we're on like 41, buddy. We're not on 4. We're on 41. And we're at like 50 live viewers on YouTube, and we got a few on Twitch, so I'm not too worried about it. Menka Gamble with the perfect comment. Destiny was going over the signal communications of the Proud Boys and other group shit was 100% about overthrowing the government. Then those people are 100% guilty of insurrection and potentially sedition. Let's look up sedition one more time before I go back into the content. And again, I'm sorry for dragging ass right now, but I am getting wiped. So honestly, I'm probably going to wrap it up in the next 30 minutes, just so I can be fresh and energetic for you. Conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. Okay, and then sedition, federal definition. Law. Sure, why not? Sedition is a federal crime in the United States that is defined in 18 blah, 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 blah. Overthrow, put down, or destroy the U.S. government by force. Levy war against the United States government. Oppose the U.S. government by force. Federal definition. Sorry, that was the law. Let me see. Yeah. And in language, if they have Telegram communiques that basically are gassing each other up in order to overthrow the government, then you could call that sedition, 100%. Yeah. Zero Fuck says the Proud Boys glow, though. Listen, every major anti-governmental militia and white supremacist and jihadist organization probably has federal informants or agents inside it. However, just because, let's say that we had a militia of 20 people, let's say 5 of them were feds, let's say the 5 of the feds were encouraging the 15 other members to do more wild shit. That doesn't mean that you don't have 15 assholes who aren't doing wild shit. For me, the Fed thing is cope. Like Patriot Front or whatever, I'm sure Patriot Front is infiltrated, right? I'm sure that they have federal agents in there and federal informants as well. However, they do have diehard members. So don't cope about it. Jimmy Bean says, I'd be fine charging groups that had intention to overthrow the government if other groups who literally say down with the U.S. and are charged the same. Sure. Jimmy Bean, I'm 100% down with that. If you're saying that lefty Antifa terrorists talk about overthrowing the government and then they burn a police precinct and you 100% charge those people, and then you also want to charge the Proud Boys for doing it, sure, all day, every day. Holy shit, you may be the only politics streamer that actually treats to the politics space. Ogre Boy 6, you're my least favorite lefty reply guy on Twitter. You're going to have to explain what that sentence means. Holy shit, you may be the only politics streamer that actually treats to the streams to the political space. Yeah, that might explain why I only get like 11 viewers on Twitch. Maybe I need to change that. Now, on YouTube, we're doing better, but honestly, if streaming to politics is a bad move, that's actually good advice. So thank you. All right. Sorry. I was ignoring the content because frankly, it was putting me to sleep a little bit. Let's just get a little bit more in before we wrap it up. I'm probably going to wrap it up around 1 a.m. EST.
Why would I bring the knife?
Well, for example, I know people that always have pocket knives on them. I know people that have pocket knives on their keychains.
I understand that.
Well, Ogre Boy says, I was going through and actually unfollowing categories. Well, I fucking hate your Twitter and I hate your reply guy bullshit, but I appreciate you letting me know that the politics category on Twitch is dead, and anyone who does politics actually just streams into a different category. So thank you. Ogre Boy says, "Oh, I hate you more, believe me." Okay. Fair. All right, let's continue.
Hold on.
Reasons that,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a concealed carry permit or concealed carry license?
I do not.
Okay. Maybe it's different everywhere else. Okay. But one of the things they stress when you get a concealed carry permit is that, like, once you have a concealed carry permit and you have a firearm, your behavior changes, right? In my mind,
Love you too, Aircraft.
maybe you disagree with this. Let's say that I'm at a bar, okay, and I'm getting rowdy like I do with my boys, okay, and some guy's pissing me off and I just want to beat the shit out of him because this is what I do when I go out, okay? I think that I would have different moral and probably legal responsibilities if I was carrying a gun versus not. If I'm not carrying a gun, I don't go fight some dude. Well, fuck it, let's fight. Who cares? Let's brawl. Okay. But if I have a firearm on me, I can't fight the guy because now if I start to lose or something escalates or whatever, well, now I have a gun. Now somebody's going to get killed. I think there's a different moral and legal responsibility there. There's a difference between like a guy saying like, well, I always carry a knife in case I have to stab somebody if they try to kill me, versus a guy who's like,
The Silver Jacket Man says, "Doesn't matter to me. If some guy comes up to you and says, 'Hello, fellow citizen, do you want to overthrow the government? Do not fear or inspect me.' And you say, 'Okay, that is natural selection.'" True.
I'm going to carry a knife and I'm going to go commit a crime where I expect somebody to try to kill me, or at least like do some kind of violence against me to kick me out. Because a guy with a knife, we acknowledge, like if a guy has a weapon and he's in a house and then the owner shows up and tries to repel him, he's never surrendering without using the weapon, right?
Okay. In general, there's little things I can quibble about, but
Sure.
I don't think.
Okay, yeah. Let's move on a bit, see if they get into anything else. Somebody was saying that the first few hours are basically them hashing out definitions. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna vibe check them real quick. I'm gonna go into 90 minutes and see if it gets heated up. Let's check.
Well, that's sort of a weird qualifying question. I don't know.
You don't know if
if
the branch that enforces the law, like with no executive branch, the legislative branch doesn't matter. And with no legislative branch, the judiciary has nothing to adjudicate. So you have no government. If you don't have an executor of laws, you have nothing. You have no government. The government can't exist with only two branches.
I would say hypothetically, if there was zero executive branch, if there is no enforcement whatsoever, yes, that's a bigger deal than the government isn't allowed to tax.
Redolent Thought says, "Twitch on nostalgic today. Sonsol is apparently back, and now Twitch recommending counterpoints. Hippy dippy next. What up, Counter? Hope the fam is good. We are doing good, buddy. Good to see you. Thank you for the comment." So, yeah. Although we did just hear from Ogre Boy that we shouldn't be streaming to the political section anymore. Kookie says, "Oh no, you won't see the AI part." Did I already skip over it? Because we caught it in the clips. Grassroots Tetramon for $5 says, "Everyone at J6 had 5 agility and 9 charisma and literally nothing else." Well, listen, we caught it in the clip section, and basically, all right, if I understand correctly, just summarizing it for people who might have dug through the content in order to get this far. So, if I understand correctly, Rob was feeding prompts to Cloud AI in order to get analyses of papers, but Cloud AI incorrectly summarized an analysis of insurrections, saying that state insurrections like the BLM shit would be considered insurrections, but apparently the authors of the paper stated the opposite. They said that they would only apply Article 3 or Section 3 of the 14th Amendment or whatever. They would only apply it at the federal level. And so while morally or definitionally you could consider BLM insurrections, you likely would not apply federal rules to them. And that was a miss from Rob and his slave AI. I think I should try the DJ category. Yeah, that'd be sick. All right, sorry. Let's vibe check this before we continue.
You. However, I think that there is a clear threshold argument. So, for example, would be the difference of saying, we don't think that police can exist, therefore we will create a militia to fight.
Just Kidding says that I don't agree with that characterization. Please feel free to inform me since I skipped the section and I'm summarizing it based off of a Twitter, several tweets. And then General Ballsack says Chaz Chop was a straight up insurrection. I agree. I agree. And if you wanted to charge those people at the state level or the federal level, I wouldn't give two solid shits. If you wanted to charge them with some kind of like trespassing, burglary, theft, vandalism, battery, any of the crimes that they committed, and then you wanted to throw in a qualifier that they were seditious or they were insurrectionist, I wouldn't give two shits.
All police to stop police from existing is different from saying we're going to stop the cops from arresting our neighbor.
Well, hold on. To be clear, the Whiskey Rebellion wasn't them trying to stop all taxation from happening. I think they were just resisting whenever the tax collector was showing up to their area to collect taxes for the whiskey bullshit or whatever. It was not like they were trying to get rid of all taxation in the government.
Be careful. You're going to talk yourself out of thinking it was an insurrection under your definition, because it has to have
We're not even at my definition.
I understand. What I'm saying is that there was a public purpose, that they were criticizing the federal government's ability to levy taxes.
Yeah, but
Now,
hold on.
again,
Resisting the cops would be criticizing the government's ability to enforce laws. No?
No. It's a different standard, because one is a foundational ability, a core ability of what the government could do. The other is stopping police from interacting.
So reading Just Kidding's comment, he says, at Counterfire, he said earlier on in the debate, he was working, so he took some of the papers that Pisco had given him and gave them to the AI and asked if there were any state-level insurrections. So Just Kidding, what was the result of that answer? Because if I remember what I read on Twitter correctly, there were state-level insurrections, and based off of the definition, again, I should probably just keep this tab up, but if I'm looking at federal definition of insurrection, which we shouldn't really necessarily use that, but we're looking more at the principle than we are the legality. But insurrection defined under 18 USC 2383, insurrection refers to any act of rising against the authority of the state or its laws. Well, 100% BLM. Now you can say Black Lives Matter insofar as the peaceful protest movement protesting police brutality was not an insurrection. I will 100% take that. However, when you're talking about Chaz Chop, the autonomous area of Portland or wherever the hell they did that, and when you're talking about them burning down the police station and saying, we're going to start policing our own communities, we don't need local cops, et cetera, then I would say that those potentially could qualify as definitionally insurrections. Now, that's kind of the problem that Rob is arguing, is that it's so overly broad that it should apply to some lefty anti-statist action. So, I'm with you, but I'm not. General Ballsack says, a Counterfire, we agree on this. You'll get my monies once I'm making it again. Don't worry about it, buddy. I'm just happy you're hanging out with me. Thank you kindly. I hope we're losing a few souls here and there. I hope that they're drifting off to beautiful sleep, which we will be doing in the next 15 minutes. General Ballsack, Jimmy Bean says, as a beam in Kentucky, the Whiskey Rebellion stuff warms my heart. Just Kidding says, the AI said that there were papers made by them that said state-level insurrection existed. The paper said that Section 3 doesn't cover state insurrections. However, Grassroots Judgment says, ideally, Connor would be streaming from prison. I agree. Just Kidding says, that wasn't Rob's point. It was if state-level insurrections existed, not if they were able to be charged under Section 3 in a legal sense. Yeah, I agree with that. So honestly, I don't think the Twitter dunks were necessary, right? What was necessary about the Twitter dunks? What was necessary about DGG going after Rob for using an AI? So for instance, like this is my belief on it. AI can be inaccurate, so I would never rely on it. I would always want to read it myself because I want to use my understanding, because I don't want to trust a robot to do it, and I also want to be able to analyze it myself. However, I do understand it as a time-saving tool. And I also think that Destiny uses Wikipedia as a time-saving tool. He doesn't necessarily have all the time in the world to check every primary source under the Wikipedia. So him using that, like that itself is not a decent criticism. The criticism should stem whether or not the AI summary was accurate. And so if the AI summary got something wrong, and then Rob was operating based off of that incorrect information, that could be used as a criticism because he insufficiently researched the topic. However, it's not like a killer. It's not like a killer argument. Chaz was in Seattle Counterpoints, not my town. Excellent. Lol, that shit was dumber than Occupy Wall Street. True. Just kidding says Destiny's argument was Stringer. He said state level insurrections didn't exist legally, period. Interesting. So let's Google that real quick. What state? Well, did you say it was in Portland? Chaz Chop was in Seattle. So Washington. So let's do Washington State insurrection statute. So let's read this. Levying war. Ooh, they don't have an insurrection statute. Levying war says to constitute levying war against a state, an actual act of war must be committed. To conspire to levy war is not enough. When persons arise in insurrection with the intent to prevent in general by force and intimidation the execution of a statute of the state or to force its repeal, they shall be guilty of levying war. But an endeavor, although by numbers and force of arms, to resist the execution of a law in a single instance and for a private purpose is not levying war. Ooh, okay, so let's turn on our lawyer brains real quick. To constitute levying war against a state, an actual act of war must be committed. I don't think an act of war was committed in Chaz Chop unless you consider the occupation of territory an act of war. To conspire to levy war is not enough, so you have to do an act of war. When persons arise in insurrection with intent to prevent in general by force and intimidation the execution of a statute of the state, or to force its repeal, they shall be guilty of levying war. That is weird as hell. But endeavor, although by numbers of forces of arms, to resist the execution of law in a single instance and for private purposes, is not levying war. Okay, but endeavor, although by numbers and force of arms, to resist the execution of law in a single instance and for private purposes, is not levying war. I would have to have a lawyer break that down for me. For real. That is one of the shittiest written sentences I have ever read in reference to. I would, if I was a judge, I would have no idea whether or not to punish somebody from Chaz Chop under the statute. Yeah, that is horribly written. Okay. Well, all right. So Washington can suck my whole ass. Figured that out. Anokay Life says, yeah, the definition of insurrection is pretty vague and can just apply to almost anything, kind of like the definition of terrorism. True. Redolent Thought, I got to do some get the kiddos to bed stuff. Just popped in for a bit to say, hey, fuck you, YouTube chat. Thank you, Redolent Thought. I appreciate you dropping by. And Echo Life says, this is the problem with relying on definitions. They aren't really the most reliable sources. You need to look at both the common usage, the legal usage, the academic usage, and the modern practical use of it. Well, shit, that's how they got 5 hours of content out of this shit, right? Jimmy Bean says, Rob made a 30-minute video explaining the AI thing. Okay, cool. It's not a big deal for me. Old School says, counterpoints. Anyone using AI or Wiki in what could be seen as their professional area doesn't deserve respect. Destiny is a Wiki warrior. Rob sometimes uses AI. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't care if I was reading Wikipedia as long as I was also reading primary sources in order to formulate my ideas and my arguments. That's not a problem. But I do agree if you're doing this full time, you should probably read primary sources, which Destiny does, by the way. He did that for the Israel-Palestine debate. Jimmy Bean says, I may be wrong, but Destiny often claims state-level insurrections don't exist while citing state courts such as Colorado. Interesting. You all know what you did. True. Washington does know what it did. So let's see. Insurrection. I'll check out Florida. Florida state statute. There's a Florida state statute for it. Inciting insurrection, 876.36. Inciting insurrection. If any person shall incite an insurrection or sedition amongst any portion or class of the population of the state, or shall attempt by writing, speaking, or by other means to incite such insurrection or sedition, the person so offending shall be guilty of a felony of the second degree, punishable as provided in 775.082. So we already know Florida has it. Does Florida have a insurrection definition? I love Florida state statutes. They actually do a really good job. Florida definition of insurrection. Mm-hmm. So I'm not seeing a Florida definition for insurrection. It might exist, but I don't have time to pour through Florida state statutes. But there absolutely is an insurrection statute. 876.36. You can look it up yourself. Florida state statutes 876.36 inciting insurrection. So saying that there's no such thing as a state level insurrection is incorrect. General Ballsack says, it's easy, though AI is stupid still. Declaring an independent autonomous zone within a state means that the federal government should take action, but there's a lot of control there. Key phrase in autonomous zone, not independence. Interesting. Lots of nuance with these words. Just kidding, says at Counterfire. Just so you know, when the AI gave the information, it did correctly show that the legal scholar Destiny was quoting did think state level insurrections exist. Okay, then I'm with you and I'm with Rob so far. Like, I still, I still think January 6th was an insurrection, but I'm with Rob insofar as he wasn't being bad faith or using AI to be a dick. Old School says, at Counterpoints, in Florida, insurrection is punishable by being fed to alligators. True. Although most crimes are, to be honest.
From doing things that have nothing to do with your attempt to overthrow the government. So, for example, I'm not saying, when I say overthrowing the government, it does not meet the definition of overthrow the government that I'm trying to stop this cop from arresting me right now. And you say,
no, wait, you're not talking about stopping a cop from arresting me right now. I'm talking about if you form a militia to stop cops from arresting your uncle versus forming a militia to stop cops from taxing your uncle, you're saying one is clearly an insurrection and another is clearly not an insurrection.
I'm not saying it's clearly an insurrection. I'm saying it probably is an insurrection.
Okay, even probably one or the other. There's like no, but in my mind, I'll ignore the fact that all of this is, I would say, a little absurd. If anything, I would say that the police and the execution of law is far more fundamental to government than taxation. We can imagine a world with no taxation. It would be weird. Maybe the government would have to like produce and sell products, or maybe they would raise money through donations. It'd be weird. But you literally cannot imagine a government with no executor. You can't, because
I just want to be clear. We're not going to your definition. Just for right now, I want to be clear. You're saying that it is a more obvious attempt to overthrow the government to stop police from arresting.
Vlad, Jesus, you're like my favorite dissident right reply guy, but what the fuck is this? If you have to debate about whether or not it was an insurrection, it probably wasn't. Just saying. Really? A violent uprising against an authority or government. We don't have debates about whether or not that shit is any time. And just because it's failed doesn't mean that it isn't. People do failed shit all the time. You know, there's that failed coup in Venezuela where like a random former Green Beret tried to link up with some indigenous people in order to overthrow the Venezuelan government. Would you say it wasn't a coup because he failed? You know, you would at least call it an attempted coup if you were going to take that tact. I don't think that's a particularly compelling argument in my estimation. General Ballsack says, just a question quickly, was the bonus army an insurrection at Counterfire? I don't know what the fuck the bonus army is. What are you talking about? What historical event had the bonus army? The Silver Jacket Man says, the autonomous zone in Copenhagen was cool as hell. Haven't been back since they cleaned up the drugs, though. It may suck now. You're cheering on the drug-filled autonomous zone in Copenhagen? And Echo Life says, questions. How do we as Americans reconcile the fact our country was funded on a revolution and a later civil war, and our culture and constitution is clearly built in a way to support revolution in the future if you win? So do we only dislike it when people fail? Dead face? No. Like, if Trump... Yeah, an Echo Life, taking this seriously. If Trump proved in or out of court outcome determinative voter fraud, then January 6th would be wholly justified. The problem is that he didn't prove it in the fall of whenever that election cycle was. Was it 2020? Was 2021 the... I'm mixing up the year just because, like, I know that it falls anyways. The 2020 election, right? But he swears in during 2021. He didn't prove it before he was supposed to leave office. He hasn't proven it since in a court, and he hasn't proven it in the court of public opinion either. Honestly, like if Donald Trump just released, let's say Georgia, right? He wants to prove that Georgia was outcome determinative voter fraud. And by the way, he would only have to prove one state, and I would feel like, okay, well, he did something terrible, but he did something terrible for a reasonable reason, right? That would be a step in the right direction. Let's say that he just releases, here are the rolls for here's everybody who voted. Here's the rolls for all the people that are duplicate, fraudulent, don't live in the state, et cetera, et cetera. And then you had lawyers and reporters verify that information, and they're like, yeah, here is 30,000 votes that changes the election result. As a result, Trump should have won Georgia. That alone would be enough for me to completely change my tune and for me to say, oh, January 6th was fucked up, but there was at least some justification for it. But to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. And it's been 4 freaking years. Oh. Jimmy Bean says, a government with no executive sounds like Biden now. Getting tired, kid. We'll be up 4 hours, probably checking out. Jimmy Bean, go to bed. If you're waking up in 4 hours, go to sleep now. Go to sleep now. Wow. Counterpoints doesn't know what the bonus army is. The basis for a lot of benefits military members receive. The bonus army. If I just Google that, is it going to pop up? The bonus army, also known as the Bonus Expeditionary Forces or Bonus Marchers, was a group of World War I veterans and their families who marched on Washington, D.C. in 1932 to demand early payment of their service bonus certificates. The bonus, known also as the Tombstone Bonus, was promised to the U.S. government in 1924, but the Great Depression had made it difficult for the veterans to make ends meet. The BEF's goal was to get the money now when they needed it most. I mean, that's cool. You were asking me if that was an insurrection? Probably not. They're not trying to abolish the entire government. They're trying to get benefits that were owed to them. Yeah, Doghouse, go to bed. We're all going to bed soon. Rothbarty says, at Counterpoints, do you agree with Rob that if the definition is that broad, it makes the BLM and Antifa or whatever also makes it an insurrection? So Rothbarty, I made this distinction a little bit ago, but let's say that BLM is just protesting police brutality. A few thousand people show up to a public area. They wave their signs. They want to reform police. They dip out. Right? No, that's not an insurrection. No. I honestly, Rothbarty, I would rather answer this than continue to watch because, frankly, it's pretty dry and it's definitional, and we need to go to bed anyways. So I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer any other questions in chat, and then we're going to wrap it up. But let's say that BLM just shows up, does a protest police brutality. They go home. Who cares? Right? No, not an insurrection. Let's say that they show up and they start a riot. Right? They start fighting cops. They start fighting each other. They start fighting counter-protesters or whatever. Are they trying to abolish the government? If the answer is no, then it's not an insurrection. However, I think that there is a strong argument to be made for Chaz Chop, the Seattle Autonomous Zone. That is insurrectionist because they were hoping to grow, and they did not recognize the authority of the government. And then also, I think that there was the police station that got set on fire, and some of those rioters, protesters, and far leftists were saying, like, we want to abolish the police. We don't recognize their authority over us. We don't recognize the authority of the state, et cetera, et cetera. We think they're corrupt, evil, whatever. We need to rip the entire system down and start from scratch. I would view those people as insurrectionists. So yeah, like, I do agree that if the definition is wide enough that you can't capture all of BLM, but you can capture portions of it. General Balsack says, well, Patton and MacArthur dispersed it with violence, just saying. Yeah, well, that happened with the World War I veterans under Smedley Butler as well. So Mackie Hilden says, not going to bed. It's 1400 for me. Jesus. Where are you at? You in like Japan or some shit? Pachydermis Absurdus says, I'm not going to bed. Counterpoints is an authoritarian who tries to force people to go to bed against their will. True. Counterpoint says, I'm heading out, but I suggest you read about the bonus army and how they transform the way America treats its veterans. Great. I will. Grassroots Tetramon for $5 says all of this is easily fixable by putting all the non-me people in prison. Sorry, zero fucks, peace and love. True. Very true. Because Grassroots Hegemon has given me the most amount of money, the rest of you are going to prison when I become dictator of America. So sorry about it, but anyways, we're wrapping up, guys. We're going to go to bed. So Rothbard says, okay, and Kamala and other political figures were in social media making posts comparable to Trump's when they were doing that. Can they be on the same level of Trump in inciting? I mean, potentially. It depends on what they were saying, right? If they're saying like Trump, if they're saying peacefully and patriotically petition your local law enforcement to stop asphyxiating young black men or middle-aged black men as a part of their duties, then yeah, I would think that that is not insurrectionist. But if they said, yeah, burn that motherfucker down, Molotov cocktail your local police precinct and overthrow your local state government, then yeah, absolutely, I would consider it. It's funny, I Counterpoints dances for the libs money. Woke CIA drone pilot. I don't even think, like, I think Grassroots Hegemon is centristy. I know that he says that he's a liberal, or at least he said that he is liberal, but I'm pretty sure he's like an anti-leftist, anti-SJW kind of fella. So I don't think that your indictment of my character is cutting as deep as you want it to. Ugh. I haven't seen any evidence the riot was planned, Vlad the Kebabber says in reference to January 6th. Well, earlier in the show, we were talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about come on, Yellow and Black. Come on, Proud Boys. Proud Boy QRFs with thousands of, with QRFs with assault rifles ready to go in, and they were also coordinating, trying to bump into the stuff. Woke CIA drone pilot says, no, Brianna Wu's money. Well, Brianna Wu hasn't worked for Progressive Victory for, I don't know, 6 months or so. So it hasn't been Brianna Wu's money for a while. And on top of that, I think I articulate all my positions pretty well. So you can tell me what you think I'm dancing on, but I think I answer all my political perspectives pretty well. Silver Dragon Man says, nah, you're going to need the governor or the equivalent to run the empire. I'm down, selling out my values to an authoritarian regime for corporeal power. Excellent. Okay, Silver Jacket Man, you are spared the gulag. Rothbard says, fair enough that you would be a short debate with you and Rob. Lowell, I think he agrees with you. I thought you were more on the Destiny side. Nah. I don't simp for... I'm not saying that Destiny is simping for lefties in the debate, but I don't simp for lefties. When the left wing does something up, it's up. When the right wing does something up, it's up. You just call what the lawyer said earlier. Call balls and strikes as best you can. Grassroots Hegemon says extremely right wing, but unenthused by the weird ass something. Go to bed, my man, says General Ballsack. So, anyways, yeah, I think I need to wrap it up. I'm getting tired. I'm getting loose. I'm getting stupid. I'm getting groggy. I'm not as articulate or as passionate as I want to be. And on top of that, that's kind of a dry debate. So we'll see. We'll see. I might have left his best posted. I might just need to approach it on a different day. But I do want to say parasocial love to General Ballsack, Grassroots Hegemon, Christian Valeris, Rothbardy, Silver Jacket Man, Woke CIA drone pilot. You can eat a bowl of wieners, but thank you for being here. Old School, thank you for coming back. Just kidding, thank you for being here. Jimmy Bean, Anoke Life, Possum Nation. I'm just reading off names. Redolent Thought, but thank you for being here. Cross-platform, we probably peaked out at like 70 somewhere in there, that's pretty much an average night for us. And thank you to Christian Valeris and Grassroots Hegemon being the absolute kings and carrying the channel with a buttload of donos. You are my sake tanukis. I parasocially love you. When everybody else gets rich, please give me your money so I can do this full time, so we can have fun together, and so we can use our money to improve the lives of young men and men in general everywhere, because women are terrible. Thank you for all the 07s. You beat me to it. I'm saluting you. Go to bed. All of you. Even the guy who it's 2 p.m. Go take a nap. All right. Parasocial love to you and yours. Bye for now.